It's time for another round of Minecraft mobs as superheroes and supervillains. In the comment section of the previous video in this series, a lot of you had really great suggestions for what mobs to use in a follow-up episode, and a bunch of people suggested I do a villain-specific episode. I like that idea, but I also like the idea of doing another hero episode, and eventually I just ended up deciding to do a little bit of both. I think it ended up being a good call, and I hope you all like the results. Let's get into the stories and art, shall we? Let's go! Hit like, if you want. Subscribe, if you feel like. But either way, enjoy the show. The city of Craftopolis is one of the largest hubs for superhero and supervillain activity in the world. With so many brilliant inventors creating new and incredible creations all across this technological marvel of a place, heroes must keep vigilant watch to ensure that villains don't get away with stealing from any of these great minds. Alayla had only been in the superhero game for 2 months, but already had worked with a number of impressive heroes, and she was constantly eager to find new ones to work alongside. Her latest team-up would come when she got word that a group of villains were headed to Craftopolis Island to attack the Monimus Collective, a facility where people came together to share ideas and help each other in furthering their creations. As Alayla flew over the bay towards the island, another hero leapt up to the water's surface and swam at rapid speeds alongside her. This was Hydroaxle, a hero who focused her efforts on protecting the shoreline shops and anyone who made their way into Craftopolis Bay. Her powers were amplified when she was in water, so she generally only took on missions that didn't stray far from the bay, but that meant Craftopolis Island was well within her jurisdiction. Alayla found Hydroaxle to be a wonderful ally. For fighting, she had some base level super strength and speed, but her healing abilities were particularly helpful. Axel could heal herself after being struck by closing her eyes and remaining still for a few seconds. On top of that, she could heal her allies by putting her hands on whoever needed healing and letting energizing water particles pump through her fingertips into the person. Axel was also a fairly new hero to Craftopolis, so after working together, she and Alayla became very fast friends, determined to work together again in the near future. They stayed true to this, teaming up less than a week later, and to Alayla's surprise, Axel showed up in a different colored costume than before. Instead of pink, this time she wore yellow. Alayla didn't know many heroes who had multiple costumes unless it was for a specific purpose, but Axel just liked to change things up for fun. She even had a blue outfit that she only wore on very rare occasions if she was teaming up with a particularly renowned group or hero. Alayla adored the fun-loving attitude that Axel brought to the hero game, and knew that they'd work well together throughout both of their careers going forward. While Axel became one of Alayla's favorite people to work with, Axel was limited to missions close to the bay, so Alayla would often still have to work with others when facing villains farther inland to the city. But this simply meant she had more of an excuse to continue finding new people to team up with. One that she was thrilled to finally fight alongside eventually was one of the most renowned protectors of the city, Golemier. He wasn't much to look at, as his mechanical iron-armored supersuit often looked tattered and run down, but it was always a mistake for a villain to underestimate him because of this. Golemier can hit harder than near any other hero in the city. It's rare for him to hit a foe and not have them fly backwards a fair distance. And if a foe is a ways away from him, well, he doesn't have any projectiles per se, he does get a fair amount of range out of his hits. This is because his arms are expandable and can shoot out from his body to punch foes from afar, and even at a range the hits don't get any weaker. He can also take a hit like a champ. While his armor has its fair share of dents and dings in it, nobody has ever been able to actually penetrate it to harm his physical body, which nobody has ever actually seen. It's heavily rumored by many that Golemier is actually an amputee and controls his armor mentally. He has on occasion lifted off his mask to calm scared civilians, which has proven that he is physically in the suit, but the way his arms can bend freely when extended suggests that he doesn't have a physical limb inside them and is controlling the suit with his thoughts. But that leads to something else that Alayla liked about working alongside Golemier. While he was sometimes known for being short-tempered, he also had proven many times to be a very compassionate and kind hero to those he protected. He even carried a flower, often hidden away somewhere in his suit, to give to people he'd helped, as a way to try and take their minds off of the fear they'd experienced from whatever had threatened them. Spending a day alongside Golemier made Alayla question why she'd heard rumors of him being short-tempered, but she eventually found that many of those rumors had been pushed by another hero, Raid Ravage. While Ravage wasn't known for being talkative, he'd never shy away from sharing his grievances about Golemier. They'd teamed up once years back and had majorly butted heads, even ending the collaboration in a brawl with each other that was widely publicized and not great for either of their images. People had assumed that they would work well together, being two armor-focused heroes, but their personalities had majorly clashed, and they did everything they could to stay away from each other's territories from then on. Alayla hoped they could someday squash that beef, as they were two of the toughest heroes in the city and could do great things together. But, for the time being, she was just glad the city had them both, working for the good of its citizens. Of course, while Alayla has enjoyed working alongside many respected heroes, the reason she's had these chances to work with others is because of the villains they're all working to stop. One of the toughest ones she's come across comes in a very small package, but that doesn't make her any less difficult to face. Shulk Tank is a young villain of only 14 years old who utilizes a myriad of tech-based weapons. She has no abilities herself, but the tech she regularly uses makes up for this. She's almost always covered by a purple dome that's proven near impenetrable by any attacks. It can hover off her when she needs to attack foes, but much of the time it's covering her completely. She has gyro wheels in her boots and uses those to roll at fast speeds down the city streets, seeing through an array of lenses on each side of the tank. Alayla was requested to help bring Shulk Tank down because of her flight abilities. See, Shulk Tank's main form of attack doesn't often harm her opponents, but it does significantly hinder their ability to chase her down. On her wrists, Shulk has prototype grav blasters. She shoots a burst of yellow energy that flies towards her target, seeking them down if they try to evade, and once they're struck, it makes them float up into the air for a moment before dropping them. This has injured heroes in the past if they've been hit multiple times and floated high enough that when they eventually fall back to the ground, they're hurt by the impact, but in most cases it's simply a nuisance. Alayla was working alongside the hero Brightblaze on the first occasion when she faced down Shulk, and they did manage to damage some of the young villain's tech, but she was still able to escape. Luckily, since Alayla's abilities included tracking down items with the same vibrational frequency, with a broken piece of Shulk's tech they were able to track her. Temporarily. It turned out there was a very good reason heroes had been unable to find where Shulk Tank was hiding. Alayla and Brightblaze were headed down to the cave systems under the city when Alayla totally lost the frequency she was tracking. It just vanished. Luckily, they were able to go to the last place she'd felt it, where they found a hidden portal. Brightblaze recognized it as being the same technology used by the people she'd grown up around, the notorious Nether Cult. The portal could be used to access the realm that the Nether Cult summoned their magic from, but rarely did any actually venture into that place, as it was incredibly dangerous. Shulk Tank's defenses must have been enough to keep her safe in there, which would make it a perfect place for her to avoid the heroes of Craftopolis. While Blaze and Alayla were debating whether or not to go in after her, they were interrupted by a familiar, snorting voice, telling them they were trespassing in Nether Cult territory. They both turned to see a small band of pig-faced goons, led by a scar-faced, axe-wielding villain, all too familiar to Blaze. Brutalog was one of the Nether Cult's most avid defenders. He'd been given super strength and speed in a Nether ritual, similar to how Brightblaze had gotten her powers, but Brutalog was much more committed to the cult's causes. So much so that even when the ritual mutated him into a pig-human hybrid, he didn't show any sign of caring, and continued to protect his people with pride. Others in the cult had undergone the ritual to mutate and gain strength and speed, but none took their work quite as seriously as Brutalog, which was why he'd been made the leader of the Nether Cult's Pig Knight division. He wielded a golden axe that he used to slaughter any who threatened his people, even though that very weapon had given him the scar that ran over his eye. After Brightblaze had been banished from the cult for protecting the people of Craftopolis as much as her own people, Brutalog had gone after her, deeming banishment to not be enough of a punishment. He and Blaze had a historic battle, in which Blaze managed to take Brutalog's axe. She swung it at him, intending to only ward him off from coming in for a strike, but he kept charging and the blade just caught the front of his face and opened a massive gash over his left eye. He was soon after incarcerated and his weapon locked away, but both would eventually be freed by members of the cult. Since then, he'd sworn vengeance on Blaze, and was all too thrilled to see her in his territory now for another bout. It wasn't an ideal battleground for Blaze or Alayla. Alayla was content to run, but Blaze, having a particularly strong dislike for Brutalog, charged right into the brawl. She ignited her entire body in flames and struck hard at the Hogman. Despite not being fireproof, he pushed through and took the hits and hammered back with the butt of his axe, before taking some real swings. Blaze was able to dodge these strikes, but soon the other minions joined in the fight and she was quickly overwhelmed. Alayla did what she could to help, but flight provided little advantage in the cave. She tried shooting in, landing a strike, then getting out, but her blades weren't doing very much to the enhanced pigmen. Things were starting to look grim for the two, until the hero Wardar charged onto the scene and bowled through the whole group. He grabbed Brutalog and hurled him into a wall, then told Alayla and Blaze to run. Blaze knew she could beat Brutalog one-on-one, but accepted that with his backup and in this terrain, it wasn't a fight worth risking any longer. Wardar led Alayla and Blaze back out of the caves. They thanked him for the assist, but neither of them were satisfied with the outcome. Alayla still wanted to track down Shulk Tank, and Blaze wanted another round with Brutalog. But they both knew they'd have many more chances to take on strong foes, as a hero's work in Craftopolis is never truly done. I think that's a pretty good follow-up round. Admittedly, I still think I like the first episode better, but I think this is a pretty good part 2. And are we gonna end up doing a part 3? That's really up to all of you. Well, no, it's not all up to all of you, it's up to me as well, because I'm the one that would have to make the episode. But it's only gonna happen if I see some good suggestions in the comment section. And if this video does decently well. There's a lot of factors involved, but there might be a part 3. But anyway, if you're new to the channel and you haven't seen part 1, make sure to go check that out if you enjoyed this. And maybe check out my Minecraft Mobs as Fantasy Monsters episodes. Those are some fun ones too. And besides that, that's all for today, except of course for ending the video on a positive note. And the thought I want to leave you all with today is the idea that first thing when you wake up in the morning, as soon as you realize that you're conscious, try to think to yourself, today is the best day of my life. Repeat it a bunch of times and really try to sit there and feel that feeling. Before you check your phone or anything else, try to really feel that, because it can be a great way to help set your mind up to just be more positive and see the good things throughout your day going forward. Personally, I also recommend meditating first thing in the morning, but for now I'll stick with having some kind of really good positive thought as the first thing you think when you wake up. Hope that's helpful to someone out there. Thanks so much for watching, everybody. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Monday. Goodbye.